When they finally wake up, it's already too late because your silence isn't a game, it's a boundary, and your absence isn't revenge. It's the consequence of everything they refuse to face. They thought you'd always be available, always reachable, always waiting, until the day you weren't. And that's when the panic hits, not because they suddenly became ready for love, but because they just realized they lost access to you for good. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why an avoidance wake up often turns into a full collapse, and how your detachment becomes the most powerful message you've ever sent. There is a truth you need to let land gently in your chest. Your availability can become someone's favorite addiction, and your absence becomes the only withdrawal that finally forces them to feel. For the longest time, they didn't have to confront the weight of losing you because you were always there in some form, even when you were hurting, even when you were tired, even when you were quietly breaking. When someone lives in avoidance, they don't fall in love the way you do. They don't lean in when things get real. They lean back. They don't hold the emotion. They manage it by creating distance. And the hardest part is that they can still care about you while still refusing to show up for you. They can still miss you while still making you feel alone inside the relationship. Your presence was their comfort, not because they cherished it, but because it required nothing from them. They could disappear and return. They could go cold and then warm up just enough to keep you hoping. They could keep the connection on a string, just tight enough to stop you from leaving and loose enough to avoid responsibility. And every time you answered, every time you forgave, every time you explained your pain with patience, you were unknowingly teaching them something dangerous, that you would stay available even when you were not being valued. That is the drug, not love, access. Access to your warmth, your attention, your loyalty, your emotional labor, access to the reassurance they didn't earn, access to the softness they didn't protect. And if you have ever wondered why they seemed most calm when you were the one doing all the work, it's because your availability allowed them to avoid themselves. As long as you were still reachable, they didn't have to face consequences. As long as you were still waiting, they didn't have to grow. As long as you were still hoping, they didn't have to change. But then something shifts in you. Not loud, not cruel, not dramatic, just clear. You stop reaching, you stop checking, you stop explaining, you stop offering yourself as a bridge to someone who keeps walking away. You don't do it to punish them. You do it because you finally choose to protect what is left of your heart. And in that moment, your absence becomes a mirror. It reflects back everything they tried not to feel. It reflects the emptiness they created. It reflects the love they treated like it would never run out. This is why the first stage of their wake up feels like confusion. They send a casual message. They test the water. They throw out something small, something safe, something that doesn't require vulnerability because they expect the old pattern to hold. They expect you to respond. They expect your energy to return like it always has. And when it doesn't, when they meet silence or a calmness they can't manipulate, the reality begins to press in, not as a thought, but as a physical feeling, a tightening in the chest, a restlessness, a sudden need to regain control. And you have to understand this. That urge they feel is not always love. Sometimes it is fear. Fear of losing access. Fear of facing what they have done. Fear of being left with themselves. Because when you are no longer available, they lose the comfort of knowing they can come back anytime. They lose the luxury of treating the relationship like a revolving door. They lose the power they felt when you were the one chasing, and that is when the mirror becomes unbearable. They start remembering you, not the version of you they minimized, not the version of you they ignored, but the real you, the one who stayed up late thinking, the one who tried to communicate without blaming, the one who offered understanding when you deserved effort. They remember the tenderness you gave, and it hits them that tenderness is not guaranteed, that loyalty is not infinite, that love is not a subscription that renews itself no matter how badly it is treated. Your absence becomes the withdrawal, and withdrawal always hurts because it forces the body to feel what it has been numbing. It forces the mind to face what it has been avoiding, and suddenly Everything they push down rises: the guilt, the regret, the panic, the realization that you were not just an option. You were a rare kind of peace. You were a safe place. You were consistency, and they only recognized your value fully when it was no longer available to them. That is when the wake up turns into collapse, because collapse is what happens when the old coping mechanism stops working. Avoidance is a coping mechanism, distance is a coping mechanism, control is a coping mechanism, and your constant availability allowed those mechanisms to stay intact. But when you detach, you remove the fuel, you remove the escape route, you remove the reassurance that kept them comfortable, and now they have to face the truth. Not your words, not your tears, not your explanations, the truth of your absence. And listen closely, because this part matters for your healing. Their collapse is not proof that you should go back. It is proof that your boundaries are real. It is proof that you are not asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person to meet you where you were. It is proof that your love was powerful, because it takes a powerful presence to be felt so deeply in its absence. You might feel guilt because you have a heart, because you don't want to hurt anyone, because you still remember the good moments, but you have to remind yourself you did not create this pain out of cruelty. You created distance out of necessity. You did not become unavailable to be petty. You became unavailable to stop bleeding. You became unavailable because your nervous system was tired of being on edge. Your mind was tired of guessing. Your heart was tired of waiting for what should have been given freely. If they truly wake up, real wake up, not panic, not temporary sweetness, not words that vanish when the moment passes, then it will come with action. It will come with consistency. It will come with accountability. It will come with a new way of showing up that does not require you to beg. But until you see that, your job is not to rescue them from the mirror. Your job is to stay committed to the person you became when you finally chose yourself. Because your availability should never be the price you pay to be loved, and your absence should never be the only thing that makes someone realize your worth, you deserve someone who sees you while you are there, who values you while you are present, who protects the connection before it reaches the breaking point. And if someone only wakes up when you are gone, then let them sit with that lesson, not because you hate them, but because you finally love you. Their collapse is not your revenge. It is not your plan. It is not the result of you becoming cold or cruel or calculating. It is simply what happens when reality finally replaces the story they were living in. For a long time, they lived inside a comfortable illusion that no matter how many times they pulled away, you would still reach, that no matter how confusing they became, you would still explain, that no matter how inconsistent they acted, your love would keep smoothing the sharp edges of their behavior. And you did, for longer than you should have. You kept giving understanding to someone who kept giving distance. You kept offering patience to someone who kept offering uncertainty. You kept trying to make sense of mixed signals because you believed if you just loved harder, stayed softer, communicated better, they would finally meet you where you were. But the truth is, they were not meeting you. They were managing you. They were managing the relationship in a way that allowed them to feel safe without being accountable, close without being consistent, connected without being vulnerable. That is why your presence felt like oxygen to them, and why your absence feels like suffocation now. Not because you were supposed to be their lifeline, not because you were responsible for their emotional stability, but because they got used to a version of love that asked very little of them. They could leave and return, and you would still be there. They could go silent, and you would still care. They could act distant, and you would still try. Over time, that pattern doesn't just become normal. It becomes a guarantee in their mind, and that guarantee creates entitlement, a quiet entitlement that says, I don't have to show up fully because they won't fully leave. So when you finally do, when you finally become unavailable, it shocks their system. But that shock is not something you created to hurt them. It is something they created by avoiding the consequences of their own choices. Your detachment doesn't punish them, it reveals them. It reveals what they have been doing. It reveals what they have been taking. It reveals what they have been ignoring. Because as long as you were always available, they never had to face the cost of being emotionally absent. And listen carefully, because this is where you might start to question yourself. This is where your empathy can betray you. You might see their panic, their sudden messages, their emotional confusion, their late night reach outs, their I miss you, their I didn't mean it. And you might feel that familiar pull to soothe, to explain, to rescue, to make it okay. You might feel tempted to believe that their collapse is proof that they love you deeply, that you mattered, that the connection was real. You did matter. You still matter. But their collapse is not automatically love. It is often the first time they are forced to feel what they avoided feeling while you were present. When someone has used distance as a shield their entire life, they don't react to loss with calm maturity. They react with survival. They react with urgency. They react with a need to regain what they lost, not always because they are ready to hold it with care, but because they are not ready to sit with the emptiness they created. That emptiness is loud when you're gone. When you're there, your love fills the room, even when they contribute very little. Your energy covers the silence. Your effort keeps the connection breathing. Your willingness to stay keeps the consequences sleeping. But when you step back, the room becomes quiet. And in that quiet, they finally hear themselves. They finally hear what they've been running from. They finally hear the truth that your love was never something they were entitled to. It was something they were supposed to protect. And the most painful part is that they often recognize your value in reverse. They remember you not in the moments you were asking for more, but in the moments you were giving everything. They remember the way you showed up, the way you tried, the way you stayed gentle even when you were angry, the way you kept your heart open even when you were scared. They remember the tenderness you gave them, and suddenly it hits them that tenderness is rare, and that they treated rare like it was common. So their collapse begins, not like a dramatic breakdown, but like a slow internal unraveling. They check their phone more, they replay conversations, they wonder why you're not reacting the way you used to. They stalk the silence, trying to find a crack in your boundary. They tell themselves stories that you'll come back, that you're just busy, that you're just upset, that this is temporary, because accepting that you are truly unavailable means accepting that they made choices that finally cost them something real. And that is where reality becomes unbearable. Reality says you can't keep someone on standby forever. Reality says you can't ignore needs and expect loyalty to stay sweet. Reality says love that is only appreciated when it's missing is love that was mishandled when it was present. Reality says you don't get to be careless with someone's heart and still demand access to their softness. And you are not wrong for letting reality do its job. You are not wrong for stepping out of the pattern that kept you small. You are not wrong for refusing to be a comfort object. Used when convenient, ignored when real intimacy is required. You are not wrong for choosing peace over hope that keeps humiliating you. Because hope can be beautiful, but hope without evidence becomes self-abandonment, and you have abandoned yourself enough. Their collapse is not a signal that you should return to old dynamics. It is a signal that the old dynamics are no longer sustainable. If they truly want to be in your life, not just in your attention, not just in your emotional labor, not just in your availability, then their wake up will have to grow into responsibility. Responsibility looks like consistency. Responsibility looks like repair without excuses. Responsibility looks like the ability to sit in discomfort and still show up. Responsibility looks like learning how to communicate instead of disappearing, learning how to face feelings instead of outsourcing them to you. And if they can't do that, then what you are witnessing is not transformation, it is withdrawal. You are not required to be the medicine for someone who refuses to change the habit that made you sick. You are not required to comfort someone through the consequence of losing you. You are not required to reopen your heart just because they finally feel the fear you lived with for months. You can have compassion for their pain and still be loyal to your boundary. You can acknowledge what they feel and still protect what you deserve. You can love the memory of what you hoped it could be and still choose the reality of what it was. Because this is what self respect looks like when it stops being a concept and becomes a decision. It is quiet, it is steady, it is you refusing to pay for love with your mental health. It is you refusing to keep proving your worth to someone who only sees it when you're no longer available. It is you letting reality speak and you letting the truth stand, even when your heart still trembles, even when a part of you still misses them, even when the old version of you wants to reach out. You stay with yourself. You stay anchored. You stay unavailable to anything that requires you to shrink, to beg, to chase, to bleed in silence. And you keep choosing you again and again. Your power was never in the dramatic exit. It was never in the speech you rehearse in your head at 2 a.m. It was never in the perfect last message that finally makes them understand. Because the truth is, someone who has avoided accountability for months will not suddenly become emotionally fluent because you found the right words. If words could fix it, your tears would have been enough. Your patience would have been enough. Your explanations would have been enough, but they weren't. Because the problem was never your ability to communicate. The problem was their refusal to meet you. Leaving loudly feels tempting when you've been silenced for so long. It feels like justice when you've been dismissed. It feels like taking your power back when you've been treated like your feelings are too much. You want them to feel what you felt. You want them to hear the pain you swallowed. You want them to finally sit with the weight of what they did. But loud leaving often keeps you emotionally tied to the outcome. It keeps you waiting for a reaction. It keeps you watching their face, their messages, their regret, because the noise is still a form of connection. It's still energy flowing toward them, even if it's angry energy, even if it's wounded energy. Clean leaving is different. Clean leaving is quiet, and that quiet can feel terrifying at first because your nervous system is used to chaos. Your heart is used to trying. Your mind is used to searching for proof that you mattered. Clean leaving doesn't beg for closure. It creates it. It doesn't ask for permission. It chooses peace. It doesn't announce the boundary like a threat. It lives the boundary like a truth. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. It is the moment you stop auditioning for love. It is the moment you stop turning your needs into a debate. Detachment is when you realize you don't have to convince someone to treat you well. You don't have to keep translating your pain into softer language so it won't scare them away. You don't have to keep shrinking your expectations so they can stay comfortable. Detachment is when you stop handing out access to you like it's free and you start treating your heart like it's sacred. And silence, real silence, is not a punishment, it's protection. It's you stepping out of the cycle that made you doubt yourself. Silence is the boundary that says, I will not keep explaining what basic respect looks like. I will not keep responding to mixed signals like they are a love language. I will not keep giving you the benefit of the doubt when the pattern has already proven itself. Silence is you refusing to participate in a dynamic that only works when you keep trying harder than they do. An avoidant person often knows how to handle emotions by creating distance, and when you leave loudly, it can give them something familiar: conflict, intensity, a reason to shut down, a reason to say, "This is why I pull away." Loud leaving can become the story they tell themselves so they don't have to face the truth. Clean leaving takes that story away because there is nothing to point at. There is no explosion to blame, no messy scene to hide behind, just your absence, just your calm, just your refusal to keep bleeding to prove you're real. Clean leaving is you not checking if they watched your story, you not rereading old messages like they're scripture, you not opening the door because they knocked softly this time. It's you removing yourself from the emotional tug of war. It's you not negotiating with loneliness. It's you not letting one "I miss you" erase months of inconsistency. Clean leaving is you accepting that your heart deserves stability, not suspense. And it hurts. It hurts because the part of you that loved them wants to believe the wake up is different this time. It hurts because you remember the moments that felt genuine. It hurts because you still have empathy, and empathy can make you feel responsible for their discomfort. But your empathy does not mean you owe them access. Your empathy does not mean you should keep your life on hold. Your empathy does not mean you should reopen a wound just because they finally noticed you're not there to soothe them. You will feel tempted to prove you're not cruel. You'll want to send a message to soften the boundary. You'll want to reassure them that you're not angry, that you don't hate them, that you're just trying to heal. But sometimes reassurance is exactly what keeps the cycle alive. Sometimes your kindness becomes the loophole they climb through. Sometimes your explanation becomes the rope they use to pull you back into the same confusion. You can be a good person and still say nothing. You can have a tender heart and still keep the door closed. Self-respect is not loud either. Self-respect is steady. Self-respect is when you stop chasing people who run. Self-respect is when you stop competing with someone's fear of intimacy. Self-respect is when you stop making room for behavior that makes you feel small. Self-respect is when you realize that love should not cost you your dignity, your sleep, your appetite, your peace, your confidence, your sense of self. Clean leaving also means you stop building a case. You stop collecting receipts. You stop preparing for the day they ask, "What did I do wrong?" Because the person who truly cares will not need you to present evidence like a courtroom, and the person who doesn't care will use your evidence to argue, to deflect, to minimize. Clean leaving is accepting that you don't need them to agree with your decision for your decision to be valid. You don't need them to understand your boundary for your boundary to work. And yes, they may come back. They may reach out with warmth that feels like water in a desert. They may say the words you've been waiting to hear. They may sound sincere. They may even believe they are sincere in that moment. But clean leaving teaches you to watch patterns, not promises, consistency, not intensity, repair, not regret. Because regret can be loud and still temporary, but real change is quiet and consistent. It shows up on ordinary days, not only when you're halfway gone. There's a kind of strength that feels almost invisible. It's the strength of not reacting, the strength of not arguing, the strength of not pleading, the strength of not checking, the strength of letting the silence do what your explanations could not. It is the strength of letting them sit with the consequence without you rushing in to cushion it, without you turning their discomfort into your responsibility. So when you detach, do it cleanly. Not because you want to hurt them, but because you want to heal you, and healing needs space. Healing needs distance from the thing that kept reopening the wound. Clean leaving is you choosing peace even when your heart still shakes. It's you choosing yourself even when you miss them. It's you closing the chapter without asking them to read the last page with you. It's you walking forward with your dignity intact and your softness still yours.